The Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders are now in a win-win situation. I'll break it down on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the mastermind, Ross Jackson. On today's episode, we're going to talk about a money problem in Pittsburgh. We're going to talk about our confidence in some of the rookie quarterbacks, but we're going to start with Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland, and I think it's a win, 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 win. Before we dive into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Ross, I'm going to put this as simply as I can. I think this is a win, 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 win situation. And if you didn't notice, that's 4 wins, not just 2. Let me break it down like this.
Yeah, go for it.
Win number 1, the fans of the Cleveland Browns.
100%,
They were about to
100%.
have Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, like garbage season. That is going to be, they'll be bad maybe either way, but that severely lacks drama and excitement. So the fans are winners. The team is a winner because from a football perspective, either Shedeur Sanders is boom or bust. Either you figure out, holy crap, we backed our way into our franchise quarterback, he's good, or he's bad and he leads you to that quarterback that you actually wanted to take in 2026. So from those perspectives right there, you have to start Shedeur Sanders. But then you look at it from an ownership standpoint, and the owner wants to sell jerseys. He wants people in the seats. Well, Shedeur Sanders going to help you sell the team to the fan base more than if you didn't have him. And finally, Shedeur Sanders himself, you get the opportunity to play, and even if you play bad, you can just have your dad send out, "Oh, Browns organization is garbage," and everybody will give you a pass because
Everyone
you're at the
will
worst It's the worst quarterback environment since I've been born for 35 years now. It's the worst quarterback environment in the NFL. So even if Sanders plays poorly, you could blame it on the Browns. It's a win for him. It's a win for the Browns. It's a win for the fans. It's a win for the team. Start Shedeur Sanders.
Absolutely start Shedeur Sanders. And I'll tell you the other way that the team is a winner here is that if Shedeur Sanders doesn't work out, well, look, didn't spend a number 2 overall selection on him, spent a 154 overall selection on him. So you get to work around with that. And then
Ross, let me tell you, you threw the softball up to my guy, Spencer Germain from Locked On Browns. So I got to let him explain exactly what you just said.
But to get Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, a guy that had higher round value and just didn't do very well in the pre-draft process, and so teams weren't really high on him, that tells me like there's a chance he could pan out. Like he's got a high ceiling, he's got a higher ceiling, and like the repercussions if he doesn't meet that ceiling are less because he's a 5th round pick. Like no one's the wiser if he doesn't pan out. No one's going to sit there and be like, well, they used that 5th round pick on Shedeur Sanders. What a waste that. Like it's just going to kind of be like, okay, he was a 5th round pick. It was worth taking a swing at that point, and you're going to keep moving on. So I think this is like the ultimate, that's the first part of like the win-win scenario, is that he could pan out to be a guy that was more worthy of a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick. And you got him in the 5th round. And if he doesn't pan out, again, no one's necessarily going to hold a 5th round pick being used on a quarterback that had way more potential than the 5th round against Andrew Berry.
I'm going to feel really bad for Spencer when fans do exactly that, but he's 100% right. He's 100% right.
Yeah. So listen, let me say a few things to be devil's advocate here.
Sure.
So when you take Shedeur Sanders and you say, oh, it's a 5th-round pick, blah, blah, blah. Well, they traded 2 picks up to get him. So really he's worth 3 picks, even if it's at the end of the draft. They used a pick on Dylan Gabriel right before that. So that's 4 picks in this draft that they in some way used on quarterback. All of the picks they traded to get Deshaun Watson. And then you're telling me that the Browns stockpiled that 1st-round pick so that they can draft a quarterback early again next year. Now you've given up Travis Hunter. You've used 4 draft picks on quarterback in this draft. You used all those draft picks on Deshaun Watson. You're planning on maybe trading both the 1st-round picks you have to trade up to get your quarterback a choice if that's what you want to do. It's like 10, 13, 15 draft picks used on quarterback in the last 4 or 5 years. And, Shedeur Sanders may be a 5th-round pick, but sadly for Shedeur Sanders, he's not going to get any of the leniency that comes with being a day 3 pick. He has one quarterback expectations from people who liked him and think he's been done wrong with day 3 money and circumstances. So honestly, Shedeur Sanders is a winner with the Browns if he starts, but in the overall grand scheme of it, Shedeur's kind of in a lose-lose situation. If you play well, it's because you drop. You should have went higher anyway. We're not going to give you credit for being a 5th-rounder that's overdoing your forecast. But if you play poorly, they're going to act like you were a 1st-round talent who's bombing out and you're a bust.
Yeah, very true. Very true. He is going to do that. And because of the money situation, which is one of the other big ways that Cleveland could win here, right? Getting a quarterback on a 5th-year rookie contract, that's huge. If that ends up being the case. But you're right. The thing that makes it tough is that because the money that's invested there isn't a major investment, he's not going to get the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th tries that a 1st-round quarterback gets. So he's got to be able to pay it off once he gets that opportunity. But I think he will get that opportunity. I went off during our NFL squad show on Thursday night because one of the hosts mentioned the idea that the Cleveland Browns are just going to cut Shedeur Sanders because they don't want to deal with quote unquote the circus before his rookie contract even begins, which is one of the worst takes that I've ever heard. I think some of the reporting around we're talking about Spencer Rattler I hear a lot in New Orleans, and he was a 5th-round pick too. But a lot of the reporting around Shedeur Sanders has just been borderline irresponsible. And so I'm grateful to come in here and have a responsible conversation around the young man who is going to get an opportunity. And if the Cleveland Browns are smart, try to start him as quickly as possible, as soon as he's ready.
First and foremost, it clearly looks like the owner was the impetus for them trading up and do it. So why would the same owner let you cut him at that?
Doesn't make any sense.
Right. Now, let me say this, though. Can I say if there is a loser in the Brown-Shedeur Sanders marriage? I disagree with Spencer. It is Andrew Berry, and I would include Kevin Stefanski in that as well. Ross, I got a take for you. You know why Shedeur Sanders really dropped in the draft? You know why it really was? It wasn't the film wasn't good enough. It wasn't, he has a YouTube channel. It wasn't that he's a cocky guy who wears headphones to meetings and Sure, all of that stuff gets its piece at the pie. That is a sliver of the pie. But you know what I really think the biggest piece of the pie is when it comes to Shedeur Sanders' drop? It's fear of Deion Sanders. And I don't mean him sending a tweet, him doing an interview. I mean him taking your job. These coaches and general managers, it wasn't Shedeur's meetings. It wasn't his tape. Sure, whatever. Those matter. But those people know that if Shedeur Sanders comes in, does okay, but we don't support him the right way, we're getting canned and Deion Sanders gets first crack at my job. It's fear of losing their jobs to Deion Sanders.
I love that.
Actually was the biggest reason Shedeur Sanders dropped in the draft. That's my take.
I really like that. I think the idea of people comparing Deion Sanders to LeVar Ball is really lazy because LeVar Ball had nothing else to do with his time. Deion's a little busy. He's got a football team to worry about all the other stuff. But you're right. I mean, he's already been in the NFL. That
makes him more of a threat to me. He's more of a legitimate threat than LeVar ever was.
Yeah, the way that you're talking about, yes. But the idea that he's just going to be somebody that's like on social media making everybody mad, I always thought that was really lazy. I like this take. I think this is right. And he's already been in conversation for an NFL job just this offseason. So I think that gives some credence to you. Bravo.
It frustrates me that it has been a character assassination on Shedeur Sanders, who seems like a very good-hearted kid. I watched a video from when he was a child, and Deion was consoling him about the divorce between him and his mother and Deion, and it's just like that kid is being torn down. He's a young kid who believes in himself. Did he listen to a little bit of music and this and that. Like, I understand the concerns, but to me, I think it's very clear that it's people fearing their job and losing their job to Deion Sanders that caused this to happen, not wanting to take that big risk and putting that spotlight on them more than it's anything to do with the kid. And that's what's frustrating most to me.
Best take I've heard around Shedeur Sanders in that situation.
I cooked. Let's continue. Rookie quarterback. So how much confidence do we have in Shedeur Sanders to actually be good on the field? Well, I'll tell you, I have more confidence in him than a quarterback that went in the first round. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. I'm not kidding, folks. This is one of the coolest things that I've ever heard. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV Stick 4K device. No console required. That's right. You don't need your console. You just grab a paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles, like one of my favorites, EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty, just as easily as you stream your shows. That's right. You got Netflix and YouTube, and you got all your Xbox games all in one place, and you don't got to lug your Xbox around when you travel or go on vacation or move and blah, blah, blah. Make sure that you head to Amazon.com/FireTV to get started. Xbox Game Pass, Ultimate subscription, and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, Ross, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about all of the different aspects of the Shedeur Sanders situation with the Cleveland Browns. It is a fascinating one, and I'm one person who is very positive that it won't be the last time we talk about Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland. But we need to talk about the rest of these rookie quarterbacks as well. This is just like the draft. All we do is talk Shedeur, and all the other quarterbacks get pushed to the side. Listen, all jokes aside as well, we got to talk about which quarterbacks we have the most confidence in. And when it comes to being a long-term solution and short-term having a good season, I'm going to be a first-rate homer here, Ross. I'm going to get some home cooking in. I got to go with Cam Ward. I think he was clearly the most talented quarterback in the draft by far. I think the Titans situation, while not being ideal, isn't significantly worse than a lot of the other rookie quarterbacks situation, like New Orleans or New York or Cleveland. Like, I don't think those situations are a significant over-the-top improvement for any of the rookie quarterbacks. So with the rookie quarterback I have the most confidence in, call me a homer if you want, folks. I don't care. I'm going with Cam Ward, Tennessee Titans. Ross, I understand your excitement. I do.
So excited. I'm way too excited.
See?
If you didn't say it, I was going to say it. If you didn't say it, I was going to say it. It was Cam Ward for me, easy. Like Cam Ward, I said this on draft night, and I'll say it again because I think it deserves to be said. He is the least talked about first overall quarterback pick I think I've ever seen in my feels much longer than it has been life. It is one of those situations where I'm just like, oh my goodness, can we please give this guy some coverage? He does everything. He operates in structure. He operates out of structure. He operates in rhythm. He extends rhythm. He can operate kind of in rhythm in plays, but can also extend plays and get things going by extending and giving other opportunities for these wide receivers to run second routes. He's got a big arm. He can get the ball anywhere on the field. He checks every box, and he's got NFL size. He's not one of these guys. There are these guys in the draft every year, Tyler, that I call kind of the butt guys. And when I say butt guys, I don't mean like bad guys. I just mean that they're the guys that always have like a comma but whenever you talk about them. Oh, he's got a lot of good speed, but he doesn't have an NFL arm. Or he doesn't have NFL size, but he's got a lot of moxie or whatever. Yeah. Like the Dylan Gabriels of the world. Like, come on. Like the outliers don't work. Outliers are outliers for a reason. And Cam Ward is the furthest from an outlier. I think he sees not only immediate success, but sustained success as long as he stays healthy. And that's true for everybody. That's not a specific comment on Cam Ward.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that betting on outliers, you can do that maybe if you have a better organizational structure. But when you're a team like 100%. The Titans, you got to play it by the book and do the right thing. And I do agree with you. A lot of the highlights with Cam Ward are out of structure playmaking, where he's running around the field and buying time. But if you dive into the tape, which I've done too many times.
Oh my goodness, if anyone has.
Right, I've seen Cam Ward play as many times as Cam Ward has at this point, but he really does have the ability to play within structure and go through his progressions and get the ball out on time and read the defense. Like, he can do all those things, even if those aren't the highlights that everybody loves to dive in. So we're in lockstep there. But if there's a quarterback that we have confidence in outside of Cam Ward, I can tell you, for me, it's not Jaxson Dart. And some of it, most of it, honestly, doesn't even have to do with Dart as a player, but the circumstance that he's in. And our guys at Locked On NFL Draft talked about that on a recent show where they discussed confidence meters and rookie quarterbacks.
QB2 is actually Jaxson Dart going to the New York Giants. You know, they traded up to get him with pick 25. Keith, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident you are, how confident in Jaxson Dart are you that he will become the guy for the future and keep Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, employed in the Big Apple?
I'm gonna go 5. I'm 50-50 split on it, because not only is it, how am I trying to put this? It's not only just Jaxson Dart's talent, but it's also situation, right? Because if they get in there with Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston and they don't win the 8-9 games, but they only win 4 or 5, then guess what? He's getting fired, right? Brian Daboll, GM, or at least they should be, right? Like we think they would. They might make it another year. Who knows? But in that case, then you have a whole new head coaching regime coming in, right? And then that's not the guy that they drafted, so that kind of brings in the influx plus a QB class that's extreme, that potentially could be extremely talented, and they have to be thinking about an Arch Manning already, following him up after obviously the years with Eli Manning. So I look at that from that perspective, that there is a chance that this thing doesn't go right, and they don't even get a chance. Brian Daboll doesn't even get a chance to fully coach Jaxson Dart.
Such a great point by Keith Sanchez, a Locked On NFL Draft. And I would point to, again, look at the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis. They traded up early in the second round. No, it wasn't late first round, but it was a similar trade, 2 third-round picks. You trade up, you get a guy. Mike Vrabel, 1 year, gone. Next year, Ran Carthon, gone. The coach and the GM that were involved in trading up to select you, gone. And now the Titans go get Cam Ward because they're at the top of the draft, and they move on. And it is what it is, I think Jaxson Dart could be an okay player. I don't have as much confidence in him as I do Shedeur, even just in the same situation in a vacuum. I like Shedeur Sanders better. But regardless, it's the situation and how easily we could see a path to where the people who believed in you and went to get you are no longer there, and your team's in a position to get a new guy. And all too often, people want their own guy.
You know where else we've seen this? 2018, the Arizona Cardinals, they trade up to 10. They draft Josh Rosen. The coaching staff changes. Next year, it's Kyler Murray in the building once Cliff Kingsbury took over. Because Cliff Kingsbury, let's be fair, Cliff Kingsbury put himself in a hole before he even showed up, because he had already said that if he ever had the chance to draft Kyler Murray at number 1 overall, he definitely would. And so then he ended up in that situation. But we've seen this around the NFL, that when that coaching staff changes, you have every opportunity to no longer be the guy. And there's a real chance that happens to Jaxson Dart, which is really unfortunate, because I think that he is talented. I think he needs time, but I think that he is talented. And so getting in a place that would actually be able to foster his talent was always going to be the tricky part. And so if he ends up bouncing around, it's going to be really, really tough for that to happen.
Well, Ross, I will tell you, in your feels longer than it actually is life, just like I do, time is usually not something we are afforded. But with that being said, we got a little bit more time here on Locked On NFL, and let's talk about some guys who may not have as much time left with the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, Ross, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We've talked about rookie quarterbacks to start the show. Shedeur Sanders, quarterback we like, in Cam Ward, quarterback we're a little worried about with Jaxson Dart. But now I got to continue to put a spotlight on this situation in Pittsburgh. All right, TJ Watt is on the final year of his deal. Max Crosby, Myles Garrett have gotten re-upped on their deals to reset the market, even though they weren't on the last year of their deal. You're seeing DK Metcalf get paid. I think there are a lot of reasons here to pay attention to what's going on with TJ Watt and the Steelers. And here's the thing. I thought maybe George Pickens would be traded, and that would give the Steelers the opportunity to finally get that deal done with Watt. But according to my guy Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers, doesn't sound like that might happen.
There had been rumblings for some time about the potential of a George Pickens trade. Now, most recently, Diana Rossini of The Athletic was really pushing this. She was pushing out hey, there's the potential for the George Pickens trade. There's teams calling, and she's been saying the Cowboys were calling about them. But the Steelers didn't budge. They wanted at least a second-round pick for George. The Cowboys weren't so sure. And so the Steelers were like, no, we're not moving off this. Now, Noah, I've been talking about on my show as far as I've thought after when they signed DK Metcalf initially, I was like, I do wonder about George Pickens. But then I asked around, I was starting to just get my bearings there, and the sense that I got was that this team is not moving on George Pickens unless someone comes in and offers a haul. And I mean, a haul doesn't have to mean like a bunch of picks, just like literally a second or a first round pick. Like they would need to offer something serious for them to come off George Pickens. And that I've even heard now that the Steelers, it would be more likely for the Steelers to sign an extension than it would be to trade him away at this point.
Okay, if you sign an extension with George Pickens, that would probably be, $25 to $27 million per season? Maybe even, if you're paying DK Metcalf, $33 million a year,
right?
You might even be paying $28, $29 million a year for a guy like George Pickens. How can you afford to pay DK Metcalf and do a re-up deal with TJ Watt where you give him more guaranteed money, which is cash flow for the ownership group? I just don't see how this could work out. And we're looking at a situation where TJ Watt goes into the season set to be a free agent.
Yeah. I think the only way, Tyler, that you can get away with this if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers is if you somehow, and look, I don't foresee this happening, but if you somehow get George Pickens and his people to accept a lesser but still short-term contract extension that will allow him to get back to the market at a point where he could clean up even more than he would with at the top end of his deal right now. Does that make sense? To where instead of giving him that $25 million deal, that you get him on the $15 to $20 million deal, maybe with some incentives built in on a 2-year extension that gives him an opportunity to go back to the market after that when the money's going to be better, when he's still in his prime, all these other things. And then he's got to be able to bet on himself in that situation. But I don't know if you're going to be able to convince any wide receivers people to get that done. Remember, you ain't got to convince George Pickens. You got to convince George Pickens, the other people that are getting paper off of George Pickens. And that's going to be that's the part that's going to be really, really tough as well. But that's the only way I could see that working. Otherwise, you're kind of in a Cincinnati Bengals situation. Do you pay the wide receivers or do you pay the other guys on the opposite side of the football? And we've seen the way that the Cincinnati Bengals are kind of handling that situation. Not great. Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers figure out a way to do it better.
Yeah. The whole time I was listening to that explanation, I just wanted to say, yeah, it's a good pitch, Omar, but no.
I know, right.
I want my regular deal that all good wide receivers in my position get just because you went out and wanted to pay another wide receiver instead of me. That's not going to motivate me to make any kind of deal with you. I guess the money would be better later, and I'm sure that they will say that, but I would say, well, the money is better right now somewhere else,
Yep,
So
100%.
Again, it's confusing to me what Pittsburgh is doing, the trade of DK Metcalf, the route that they're going, and then passing on any quarterbacks. I guess I just don't see what the plan is. It's like they're a team that wants to compete right away, but aren't good enough to actually compete right away. I guess it's just another year in Pittsburgh where it seems like they're stuck in the middle.
Yeah, and it's a shame because one of the guys that makes you able to compete is TJ Watt. You know what I mean? He's the guy that can get that done for you. They still don't have Aaron Rodgers in the building. They drafted Will Howard, but that's a development guy. So where are you really going here? Are you really going to roll with, who is it that's back on their roster right now? Mason Rudolph? Right? Yeah. Are you really going to roll in with that and then choose giving Mason Rudolph a pair of wide receivers to work with over potentially extending TJ Watt? That doesn't sound like a very Steelers decision, Tyler. Doesn't sound like the Steelers at all. What's going on in Pittsburgh?
It's very confusing. It's like if they aren't going to sign Rodgers, which I still think they will. I think that's a done deal. I think Rodgers just doesn't want to work right now.
Yeah,
You know,
well, yeah,
like
you don't want to go to OTAs and mini
Right.
camps and all that stuff. Like, sign me
As
for
a matter of
training
fact,
camp.
Ross, me neither. End the show. But no, like my thing is, it's like they're acting like they're prepping for a young quarterback. Like, we're going to stack out the weapons. We're gonna,
Yeah.
But then they didn't take a quarterback who is ready to take advantage of that right away. They look like a team that was prepping to take a quarterback number 1 in the draft. You know what I mean? But they're not, and they're probably not going to be close to that. It's like, how are you going to get close to that next year in your situation? So yeah, their plan is confusing. I do want to throw one other name out there who I think really is, if I had to like put odds on a veteran who does get traded, for me, it's Kayvon Thibodeau from the New York Giants, the edge rusher who they drafted top 5 out of Oregon. You take Abdul Carter in the draft. You traded big capital for Brian Burns, who's on the other edge. You have Dexter Lawrence on the interior. Like, they have a lot of assets, money, value in their defensive line. Thibodeau is on the final year of his contract. So I have proposed this. What if we did like a George Pickens for Kayvon Thibodeau type deal? And then the Steelers could say, all right, TJ Watt, you know, like, I don't know if we're going to pay you. We'll see. We're going to look at Kayvon Thibodeau, and we might pay him half of what you want. You're turning 32. He's going into his athletic prime as a former top 5 pick. I know he hasn't been anywhere close to as good of a player. I get it, but clearly they're not as ready to give Watt new money. So maybe we get a big physical wide receiver for New York to go with Malik Neighbors, and then the Steelers double down on their defensive line reshuffle.
I wouldn't mind that at all. As the resident Louisiana native, I have to say Thibodeau rather than Thibodeau. I'm not allowed to say Thibodeau here in Louisiana. But Thibodeau coming in and being that guy that potentially, like, you add him to Alex Highsmith as well as a big part of that as well. It gives you an opportunity to say, you know what? Let TJ Watt at least play it out, prove that he still can operate at that prime, but then have a pair of solid, at least bookends that you could still rely on post after that. And then who knows, maybe you do get the rookie quarterback. Then then you have a rookie quarterback and a rookie quarterback deal, which allows you then to be able to go and beef up the rest of that roster. So yeah, I think that's a good way to go if they're willing to move off of George Pickens, which, I mean, look, no disrespect to George Pickens, but with the way that wide receivers are kind of a dime a dozen in the NFL, I don't know why you don't. You know what I mean? But I don't know.
I don't think that George Pickens is special enough to pay. I guess. Like, I wouldn't be the one to do that. I will tell you this, though, Ross, if I'm honest. It's just I'm uncultured in this way. I mean, I've been to Florida, but the closest I've been to Louisiana is like Panama City Beach in Florida, maybe Nashville, Tennessee. I'm not breaking out Google Maps, but I can tell you that is one area of the country that I have not spent a lot of time in. So I appreciate the lesson.
I'm gonna have to hold up some Louisiana words for you at some point and see which ones you can read off, which ones you know, and all that other stuff. See which ones you got. But I got you. We'll get you taken care of. Get you down here, Louisiana. We'll get you all taken care of. We'll get you all Cajun up. You'll be all right.
I'll make my way down for sure. But with that being said, you know that's gonna do it for us today on Locked On NFL. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, the Madman, with my co-host Ross Jackson, the Mastermind. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.